Definitely. I mean, what was it like when he first told you that he didn't want you to pursue his daughter after all of that, after, getting to know each other for
What I can say is there was a couple ups and downs, and there was a moment where it did seem like the relationship was a no-go.
Hey guys, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. I have some more Jinger and Jeremy updates. You guys, I am kind of Jinger and Jeremy'd out, but they are on this like blitz right now with their book coming out on May 4th. And so anytime you have some publicity, doing like publicity or work for promotion for the book, they start having interviews, right? So last night, Jinger went on her Instagram live and they were reading chapter 3 of the book. And well, they didn't really read all of it. Jeremy teased in an Instagram story that they were going to be going live and they were going to read the book. And so fans thought that since it was Ginger's chapter, that Jinger would be reading, but it was actually Jeremy that read to Jinger and then asked Jinger questions, which kind of felt a little bit awkward. I thought she might read it herself. Maybe she doesn't feel comfortable reading. Maybe he's domineering and he's a good reader. I don't know. Either way, he did the reading.
Into entire blog threads about how I wanted to move away from my family and lead an exciting life in the big city. I'm a teenager, I thought incredulously. I'm not going anywhere. I didn't let the falsehoods faze me. I knew in my heart what was true, and no one could change that. Instead, I learned to be careful.
And it was about her growing up in the public eye. And she answered some questions of his, like, one of the things she said she struggled with is trusting people. So growing up in the public eye, they talked about how you never really know whether or not you can trust people that come into your life. You don't know if they have the right intentions. You don't know if they are interested in getting to know you as a person or if they just want to know you because you're famous. She talked about how, when her they read a part where they talked about the show being pitched by TLC and she had no idea or understanding what reality television was. She shared a funny little story about how when she was growing up, they used to watch these things on these Lowe's videos like home improvements, and that was the extent of what they got to watch on TV. And so she said that they had very limited understanding of television. They had done some documentaries, but she did not know whether or not, like, she had no idea what concept it would it be around. She described the 4 different documentaries, but she wasn't really sure, like, what would they be doing. And she said at first it was hard to get used to the cameras in the house.
But they would come, when you started with your reality show, they'd come for like a week at a time.
They would come a lot. Yes, they would come in the week. I don't remember how many days it actually started out being.
But it was more than.
But it was a lot.
Yeah.
And then over time, it just became less and less of a nuisance. Jeremy commented about how one of the weirdest things about filming is when they have to eat. And they have all these people around them with booms and mics, and it just feels unnatural.
You sit down at this restaurant, and you've got like 8 grown men and women around you with audio, mics, booms, cameras, and then they say, "Okay, enjoy your dinner," and you're just kind of like, "What do we talk about at that point?" Like, what are we supposed to?
It's kind of funny.
And sometimes they don't even know what to talk about. So there's aspects of filming that a reality show that it's just not reality at all. It's not reality to have cameras filming you constantly. You're not going to be the same person on or off. And Jinger actually said that growing up this way and being scrutinized so much has taught her to be very careful. So one of the things that Jinger does not agree with is that she's a rebel.
I didn't let the falsehoods faze me. I knew in my heart what was true, and no one could change that. Instead, I learned to be careful.
And this is really bizarre to me. So during Jeremy's, they did an Instagram on his page, and then they did an Instagram on hers, and she was talking about how they labeled her the Rebel Duggar, and she didn't understand why she was labeled the Rebel Duggar because she rolled her eyes or something and had all of these very big facial expressions. So regardless of who she was and regardless of how she felt, she didn't feel like she was a rebel, but that stuck. And so she was apparently very bothered by the fact that they called her a rebel because of her liking like the city and wanting a faster paced life. And somehow that made her take things personally. And so she said once she got labeled a rebel Duggar, it made her more cautious in what she shared, and it made her more careful in how she was approaching things in general with the public. Because the platform, she said, comes with great perks because you get to share your lives and you get to tell people about your lives, but then it also has people caring about everything that you're doing, talking about what you're doing, speculating on your life. And obviously she was only 11 years old when she became famous on the show, and she's now in her mid-20s. She's spent more of her life on TV than off, which is crazy if you think about it. Knowing that she was a child, she didn't really have a choice to be famous. She has a choice now in regards to whether or not she wants to continue to engage in this world. Like she could if she wanted to not have a social media presence, do things offline, perhaps not having sponsorships and not having a podcast and not writing a book. So she could have vehicles and means to not have the public around her. But she is using this fame to write a book, have a podcast. So I always think it's interesting when, I understand the struggle of the criticism. It's not easy to be criticized. It's also not easy to have people talk about you. I get it. But then there's also this means of like, well, if you're upset about some of these things, you continue to put yourself out there. And so at some point you just have to kind of accept it for what it is. And I think she said, I do kind of accept it. I take the good and with the bad, but there are times where it's just really hard. So I guess I can agree with, I guess I can understand her point of view. And I do think that in general, Jill has sort of echoed similar things, but Jill is taking it even a bit further and saying that like, she doesn't really want to be on reality television anymore. Because she did an interview with Us Weekly, like, I think it was like a couple months ago. And they said like, do you want your kids on social media? And she and Derek said that they probably not in this season of their life would even consider it because they don't want to have to deal with the constraints of the contracts and the invasion of privacy. And they just want to have a more private life. And so even though Jill and Derek still have their lives scrutinized and talked about, I think that not having the kids on TV has really benefited them in a way that they're just not as open to all of the criticism because they're not tied to the show anymore, right? So Jinger and Jeremy are still on the show. They're still connected to some of the drama connected to that show. They're still very much linked to her father. So I think they are going to open themselves up to their own criticism. And then you have Jeremy, who has all of these problematic sermons. He is extremely homophobic. He just overall has a very archaic belief. Some people will say, well, this is just what the Bible says. It's just the doctrine. To me, I don't buy that because I feel like if you want to really go by the Bible, you wouldn't just pick and choose what sins you want to talk about. And when you repeatedly just hammer at one specific sin that bothers you while negating the other ones, like you're not talking about cheating or thievery, or you're not looking at any other immoralities. You're only focusing on, you're not agreeing with the agenda, he calls, with LGBTQ plus, while not spending the time talking about people that are doing even more horrific crimes like fraud or theft or crimes against kids. He spends all of his time so focused on the social agenda contributing to morals when there's so many other things that he could talk about. So in my point of view, sure, that's what it says in the Bible, but the Bible also says a lot of things about a lot of things that he doesn't spend all of his time talking about, right? So I think that it's hard for me to enjoy listening to them because I know where Jeremy sits on so much of the stuff. I have a lot of empathy for Jinger, and then I also have some empathy because I feel like Jeremy is kind of railroading her in a way. Jeremy opened up in an Us Weekly interview and basically said that Jim Bob Duggar made him like do a 50-page questionnaire on their relationship. And after he answered all of the questions, Jim Bob didn't want him to move forward with Jeremy, like with Jinger. So Jeremy answered all the questions, provided it to Jim Bob. Jim Bob read it. Jinger read it. And Jinger and Jim Bob, according to Christina at Us Weekly, didn't want to move forward with the relationship. There was something in this 50 pages that concerned them enough that they weren't sure about moving forward. And Jeremy said, but I just didn't give up. I persisted. I kept prodding at them.
I just remember thinking one thing is I can't give up. I don't have the faith to give up. And so I'm going to keep prodding, keep talking.
I thought that was a weird way of putting it. Like, he was motivated to be with her. He said he wasn't familiar. Like, the reason why Jim Bob had them do the 50 pages was because he was an outsider. Jinger said it was because they wanted to know Jeremy's intentions, because they didn't want someone that just wanted to be with her for her fame. I think it's more than that. I think it's also control for Jim Bob. I mean, I can understand the not wanting to be with someone who just wants to be famous, but she was an adult. She didn't need this level of, overarching invasion of everything. Like, her dad shouldn't be that involved, but it's Jim Bob. And she admitted that it was actually not that bad of a tool, because it, helped them understand a lot more about him. But the fact that he kept prodding it, when I shared this clip on my Instagram, people were calling him creepy for doing this. Now, a lot of people criticized Jeremy because they said that they feel like he was a famous, quote, soccer player that wasn't very famous and wasn't overly successful in the world of soccer. He didn't play professional soccer for that long. I mean, it's not easy to get to the level of professional, but it's also, once you get there, he wasn't someone that was like making waves. He was not a household name. He's not someone that we would know in soccer. We only know that he's a famous soccer player because he tells us he was a famous soccer player. You know what I mean? I don't know how much money he made in that. I mean, unless you have a high contract, basic players aren't going to make a ton in soccer. It's not the most lucrative. It's not like being a NFL star or NBA star. So I have no idea like what kind of level of fame. So then when he is going from that to becoming a pastor, and then he wants this platform, it does kind of look a little bit suspect. And then you also have then him saying, well, even after they didn't want me, I didn't stop pursuing them. And I understand that sometimes you are just like determined, but then I also feel like if she's having doubts and then she doesn't have the right boundaries, do you feel like somehow he might have manipulated her a little bit into this marriage, or did want a little bit of her fame? And I noticed that in all these interviews and everything that they're doing for this promotion of the book, she does less talking than him. It's a lot like their podcast. It almost seems to me in a way that if Jinger had it her way, she wouldn't be so focal or so like out there. But Jeremy is the one that I feel like seeks the spotlight more than her. She's not the one that's posting videos on her Instagram talking. She's not the one that's constantly seeking validation through her social media. It's Jeremy. So sometimes I feel like it's Jeremy that wants the spotlight and she's just kind of going along with it. So did she trade a dad that's exploiting her to now a husband that's exploiting her for fame? And why in an interview is Jeremy doing most of the talking when most people don't give a crap what Jeremy has to say? People are there to listen to Jinger. You know what I mean? It's just so weird to me. So are you surprised to hear about the 50 pages, or are you more surprised that Jim Bob didn't want them to move forward and they did, or Jim Bob and Jinger didn't want them to move forward and they somehow found a way to get together? And then what do you think about growing up on TV? Were you surprised by anything that she said or not surprised? And what do you think are going to be the more nuggets about what the bumps in the road were? Because he said that it was touch and go, or there was a lot of bumps in their relationship. What do you think is going to be revealed in that book? Tell me in the comments below. Bye, guys.